All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Agbrett, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full. Dude, you were grinding today. What's going on with you?
Oh man, I am pooped. But
Yeah, you
yeah,
say you're whooped now.
making jigs, getting the boat ready, out and about everywhere. Just it's gonna be a long weekend of guiding on Lake Erie. So just making sure everything's ready to go. Got a new video up last night on my personal YouTube channel about lipless baits. So we're working.
I don't
So
know
it's
if it's
good.
just that guide season's like opened up or something, but you've had like this added level of excitement this week where you're just like a mile a minute. Everything's like I'm getting like 32 pictures of baits you're making today, and like just about how your weekend's gonna go. I mean, Sunday, dude, we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, you're going with us, aren't you?
that's right. Yeah, Sean
Oh,
has been texting me about it basically every other day.
the
Uh,
weather is primo for Sunday. Monday is a little iffy at the
that's why I'm
moment.
working Monday.
So I don't know what we're gonna do there, but we'll figure something out. I might take them down to Ontario and see if we can get a lake trout.
Ooh, that, that could be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but dude, it's gonna be a lot of fun for folks that don't know. We have a lot of news coming, but maybe around Sunday we'll actually get to really announce it for folks.
Yeah.
But just know it's on the horizon. Andy and I have a fun day planned on Sunday. But buddy, I got a tournament this Saturday
Yeah,
on
the
one of your
charity event, right?
at one of your favorite lakes, and
Hey.
it's gonna be it's been a jam packed week. This is really all I can say is got a tournament. As people are hearing this, I got a tournament tomorrow. Then we're going fishing on Sunday, and then the work week starts over again. I have yet to really take a breath from getting home from Alabama, so it's nice to kind of sit on here tonight, talk with our man Jeff that's coming on the show, and actually just be able to relax a little
Yeah.
bit, talk fishing. It's just yeah, dude, just to
I'm hoping your
decompress a
brain
little bit.
explodes because whenever we get to talking about which the topic tonight's really cool, right? Well, today is really cool because we're talking about environmental impacts on the Great Lakes fishery and not just specific to bass, but how it affects the entire ecosystem, which is relative to bass. So it's really exciting stuff
Yeah,
that I
dude, like
love.
yeah, we were saying it offline before we were talking about Jeff before we started recording here. And I was like sitting back there, like my brain's just like firing on all cylinders, just like taking in everything he's saying. Because like is I think one of the big faults as bass fishermen is we get so hardcore in just focusing on what the bass do when there's so many different other species and different things going on in that ecosystem that affect bass that it could be really advantageous for us to understand.
Mhm.
And that's something I'm really excited to listen to Jeff talk about tonight. You and Jeff, you guys were going back to back. This might not be one where I get a word out because this is a topic that I am, to put it bluntly, I'm just not very knowledgeable in. So this is what I'm pretty excited about, dude. And so Jeff is gonna get on here in a second. And Andy, is there any more news before we bring our guest on?
Um, I guess the one thing I would say real fast is I am now fully booked for May. I have no dates at all for the month of May. It's like I think I have like 25 days on the calendar of guiding, so that's gonna be exciting and exhausting. And pretty much the same with June. I have like 7 days available in June at the end of it. So yeah, if you want to go fishing, call soon before the dates are gone.
That's good, buddy. It
Yeah,
beats sitting at a desk. That is for
that
sure.
is true. It's
That's right.
it's a glorious life of sunburn and being on the water. So
You're not sunburned. You got that nice blackfish gear to hook you up. You'll be all right.
oh, I'm still sunburned. Well, I was, but yeah, let's get Jeff on. Let's
Yeah.
digress and get Jeff on.
All right, yeah. Without further ado, let's get our guest here, Mr. Jeff Elliott. What's going on, sir?
How we doing, guys? I appreciate you guys having me on tonight.
Yeah,
Doing
thanks
good.
for taking the time to join us. I know you have a newborn at home. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but congrats. Two
Thank
weeks
you.
Too
now, I
late
think.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
too late
I'm
now.
I'm surrounded at home now. We just brought another one home 2 weeks ago, so I got 3 girls at home, and it's chaos here right now. But stepping
Oh,
away
you
for a little bit
poor
and
thing.
looking forward to the show.
You're surrounded.
I'm surrounded, dude. It's not good. They do
So-
like to fish though. Like my
Oh, that's good.
oldest, she's like 4 and like she's going turkey hunting with me tomorrow, and like she likes to fish and she'll
Oh,
hopefully be the real deal here. So we'll see.
that's
That's
legit.
awesome. Hell yeah.
It's beautiful.
That's good
No,
to
it's
see.
funny. So, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bailey.
I was just saying that was good to see. We need more of
Oh,
that.
oh, 100%, especially on the female side of things. Like, and I mean, I'm not going to throw this out there to be like brash, but if they're really into the outdoors as they grow up, there's so much opportunity for them
Absolutely,
now.
there is.
So,
They have some advantages on us for sure.
yeah. Thank well, not thankfully, but it's good for them to get that recognition for really working through the field.
Yep.
So, but I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, well, let's just start diving into things
Yeah,
here.
perfect.
So, yeah, I think first things first, Jeff. Obviously, for folks who may not know you, let them know who you are and kind of, what you do, what your gig is, because that's really what we're gonna be diving into tonight.
Gotcha. So I live in West Michigan. I'm in Muskegon area, which is like right on Lake Michigan. Basically, I from the east side of Michigan, came over here for a job, which is a fisheries biology job. I don't always study fish. I do a lot of stuff with just the food web in general. Out in Lake Michigan is what I specialize in. And I work for NOAA. So it's a federal job, and it's exciting. I love it. It means a lot to me. I get to fish a lot too. It's very flexible, so it's got a lot of perks. And yeah, I love fishing, and I love fishing for everything. Like, I'm a bass guy, like tournaments all summer long, but when other stuff's going on, like I'm on the ice all the time, or catching lake trout or salmon, or equal opportunity. When the time is right for whatever it is, like that's what I'm going to be doing.
Just straight up fish head.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Love
heck
it.
yeah.
How much fun is it to catch a salmon from the bass boat?
Dude, there's nothing better. So, they come into all of our drowned river mouth lakes in like August and September, and you catch them on like 2-ounce jigging spoons. Like, when that happens, I'm like, please don't have a tournament around that time, because I want to do nothing with bass. Like, I just want to go jig salmon.
Oh,
I've only seen it and I've heard it from a couple of the guys around here that chase salmon, and I've been like this close to going to do it, but something about a big old smallmouth that steers me in another direction.
Dude, well, unless you want another addiction, don't go, because every time a bass fisherman is like, they'll see me out there jigging. Like, I had a buddy last year. He saw me jigging. He came over and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, there's a ton of salmon in right now. Nobody knows about it yet. Like, here's a jigging spoon, and like, go to work." And he caught a few that day, and like, he was back the next day doing the same thing. So
that's awesome.
I mean, when they come in, because they're still like bright chrome, like fresh.
Yeah,
point, right? They are just vicious.
They're vicious. So like, they will come in like no matter what. But I try to time it when like we get things called lake flips over here, where you get like a big northwest or east wind, and it blows like all the warm water out and the cold water rolls in, all the alewives roll in, and that like just they flood the gates. And like the first day that happens, they really bite good, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh man. Well, dude, because this is a fishing podcast, I'm curious too. How did you get your start into all this in general? And I'm sure being an angler growing up kind of led into your career path. But like, tell us where, from square one, like who got you into fishing in the first place, and how did you get into, just where did you catch your first fish, that whole 9 yards? Like, I'm kind of curious where it all started.
So my dad and grandpa always like, big outdoors and big fishermen. My grandpa used to be in bass clubs and all that. And I think I caught my first bass on Whitmore Lake when I was like 3 years old. So ever since I was little, like they're always taking me ice fishing or bass fishing or bluegill fishing, or, that's basically what we did. My grandpa had like a 17-foot bass boat, and, got in high school or middle school, and I was just like obsessed with it. I wanted to be like the next big pro fisherman, like do tournaments and whatnot. And I'm 35. So like when I was like that age, like in high school, like nothing was like super friendly for like kids that were like 12, 13, 14. It was like the old men's club. So it was like, there were like rules, like you couldn't get in a tournament unless you were like over 16. So I couldn't even fish some of them. And, there was obviously no like high school fishing or anything like that. Like I missed all that. But I got to fish my first tournament, and like we practiced like all summer for it. And it was like in the fall, like early fall, the bite was terrible. Like, we didn't do well, but like, it was just like, I was like, this is it. Like, I love it. So from then on, like joined a club and, still fished with like my grandpa and dad and whatnot, through that time. And then like they'd let me take the boat, and in the fall, like, dude, I'd just disappear. Like, I'd come home from college or, in high school, even in the fall, like, and I would just spend like 10, 12 hours out there, just like fishing. Like, I would never get tired of it, and ended up learning a lot, and then just doing a lot of tournaments and, Southeast Michigan and whatnot. And still at that point, I was kind of like, oh yeah, bass. It's all I ever want to catch. Like, I don't want to waste my time on anything else, other than ice fishing. I've always loved that. But, the job came up in Muskegon, and I came out there, and, that's when it really kind of like, and that was probably like 10 years ago now, kind of like really broadened my horizons to like, man, I like to fish for everything. Like, there's like a good window for everything, and I want to like maximize my time. Like, when this is going on, I want to go do this. Like, even down to like when there's like hundreds of drum around, like, I want to go catch hundreds of drum.
Oh man,
they do fight hard,
dude. They're fun. I mean, there's like a time and a place for the old drum run, and we put a beating on those when we get a chance. But
that's when someone's a true fish head, is when they enjoy drum. Where I'm just like, I get so mad when I'm smallmouth fishing and I catch a drum.
When I'm smallmouth fishing, I want nothing to do with them. But
oh, it's funny too, because when you like, if you're vertical drop shotting on them, you can always tell on like the sonar when they come down on it instantly, and you feel that thump and you hit them, and that big head shaking, you're just like, son of a.
Oh yeah,
you know you're gonna be doing it for the next 5 minutes.
For sure. So, a little side note too is like, so my office is like right on the channel of like Lake Michigan and Muskegon Lake. Like, Lake Michigan's like 20 feet outside my office. So, big learning curve for me was like, well, if I'm there at work, like, I'm gonna take a break and go fishing at some point throughout the day. So like, I could really learn like when like all this stuff was going on. Whereas if I was like not there, like you'd have to like purposely go there. And I was just like put in a place where like, I've got to learn like what's happening. If I go fishing today, I start catching this. Oh, this is what's going on. Like, light bulbs go off, and, really help me kind of dial in when to do what.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm kind of curious, what made you decide to choose the career path you did? Like, where along that timeline did you decide, hey, I want to do that, and then chase that?
Early on, like, probably when I was even in like elementary school and middle school, like, I was into like, oh, there's a nature show on or whatever. Like, being a biologist, like, always sounded cool to me. Like, I never really had aspirations to do like, I wanted to be a pro fisherman, because that sounds cool, or like a biologist. And it's kind of like naive going into it. I went to Michigan State for my fish and wildlife degree, and I was like, I don't know, like, really what I'm gonna do with this or like whatever. But like, I wanted to stay in Michigan, which is like a terrible, if you're gonna go into that field, like, you have to be willing to like move wherever, because there just aren't that many jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And like, somehow, like, I just got incredibly lucky to like end up where I am. And part of my thing is like, there's kind of two different paths you can take when it comes to like fisheries biology. Like, you can be the dude who's like writing the papers and like doing all the academic stuff and all that, or you can be like kind of like the tech guy who like goes out in the field and gets all the stuff. And like, writing all the papers is not for me. Like, I'm thinking about fishing or thinking about fish or thinking about hunting or something like that. Like, I don't have time for all that. So I'm like more of a technician guy. Like, I go out on the boats, like, do all the more exciting work, and then do a bunch of fun stuff in the lab. And, it fits me really well.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. When I was growing up, I always told my teachers, like, when I was that age in elementary school, that I was like, yeah, I'm going to fish hockey. Good gosh. I'm going to play hockey professionally. I was like, when they tell you like what you're going to do and you grow up, and they're like, all right, kid, let's be real. And then like, when they asked that, I'd be like, oh, like marine biology, until like fifth grade. And I see like it requires a heavy amount of science. And it's like, yeah, we need a new career path, because I sucked at science. Big words.
It's funny.
You got to have those pro dreams and whatever, though. I mean, every kid grows up with them. So
you have to.
We all realize at some point it's not going to work out for us, but we all grow up with them.
That's right.
So like, while we're going down this path of Bailey's dreams, right? Mine was to be a Blue Angel stunt pilot. Nice. And then I automatically was like disqualified in 10th grade because I was basically blind, and you have to have like perfect 20/20 vision.
Well, buddy, you didn't achieve that, but you drive your boat like you do.
Hey, if you're not first, you're last. So
that's amazing. Oh, man.
So, that's good stuff. So, like, let's kind of like dive in here before we go in, like tournament history, since it is a bass fishing podcast. Let's like talk about like the tournament series that you normally fish. Is there a big one in Michigan? And is
Yes,
it on Muskegon or?
we have a couple. Like our tournaments, like our local scene is like really good here. Like I don't go fish a tournament unless I'm fishing against like 60 to 80 boats. Like unless it's, you know, a weeknight or a Tuesday night or something like that. Like on the weekend, like almost probably not every weekend, but like probably half our season goes from like Memorial Day to like it kind of shuts down like around Labor Day, just because of everything else going on. But you know, throughout the summer, every week to every other week, like I can fish against 60, 80 boats. There's a DNR Sports Series, which is like one of my favorites. Like, you know, the Van Dams, they own DNR Sports in Kalamazoo. They have like a ton of awesome contingency money and all sorts of stuff like that. So that's like a big one I do. We've won Angler of the Year in that a few times. Last year, there's only 3 tournaments and we won 2 of them and got second in the other one. So it was a good year.
Running
Yeah,
away with
so.
it there.
Yeah, that was a good one. So
How much does that pay out like for first?
First I think it was around $2,000 for each one, but once contingencies roll in, like, you know, I have a nitro from there, and like Hummingbird's got a great contingency, Minn Kota's got a great contingency. By the time it was all said and done, we like, me and my partner Trevor, who's a high school kid actually, and he can really fish. So be on the lookout for him in a few years. He's going to Adrian College and he's a hammer. So
Adrian's got a good team.
I think we walked away with, I don't know, like right around maybe a little over 10 grand by the time things are said and done. So it's a good year.
It's a good summer for 3 derbs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then we've got West Michigan bass. That's another big one. We jumped in a couple of those. I don't normally fish the full series just with all the kids and whatnot, like running like 8 tournaments plus like there's another series I do, which is a solo series, just not feasible. But we did have another cool thing. Like I feel like every state should have something like this. It's called the Big Stack series. It's like super high entry fee against 40 dudes, but like pays out awesome. Like, and it's all within the state. Like I don't got to travel to New York or anything crazy like that. You know, 2 to 3 hours from my house. One next year is in my backyard, so I'm excited about that.
We talking like $500 entry fee, or are we talking more?
Like $1,000.
Oh heck yeah!
Like $1,000.
That's what I'm about.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, love it.
It's pretty cool. And they actually came out with it was like such a like hit, and a bunch of people wanted in who like didn't get in because we were all kind of like, well, is everybody really going to pay this money to do this? And it filled up. So they created another one, which is kind of like half the entry fee, and then like we'll qualify guys for the Big Stack at some point. So that's a really kind of cool thing we have going on. BFLs and all that, like they do those on St. Clair. I just don't travel over there a whole lot to do that stuff because there's so much good stuff in my backyard. And that's mostly like, I live in Muskegon. We have like White Lake, which is a half hour north of us, and the Grand River, which is like 20 minutes south of me. And like, it's like the epicenter of West Michigan tournament fishing, like right there. So picked a good place to move.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By proxy almost, by getting the job, which is even
better. It like worked out real great. I mean, I got my teeth kicked in for a few years, but like, you know, definitely took a little bit to figure out. It's way different fishing over here than like the inland lakes, like just inland natural lakes I grew up in, because everything over here is connected to Lake Michigan, and that just adds a whole crazy dimension to things. But and it's always changing. All my stuff from last year, most of it will probably suck, and I'll have to find something new to catch them on. That's how it always works. So might as well delete most of my waypoints. And
I was gonna say at the start of the spring, just delete everything and start all over.
I kind of like that. I kind of like that though. That keeps like that fresh new feeling, like year after year. Whereas like when you've graphed an entire lake, you know everything. It kind of almost becomes frustrating, especially when you can't find them at that point because there isn't something new to check out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're like, well, I just suck.
And I don't want to be wrong here, but I have a question. So I'm assuming Lake Michigan gets sieges, right? So where the water flows real heavy north and south when you get a big north and south wind from one end of the lake to the other. So does that cause Muskegon to like lower and rise when that happens, since it's so directly connected to the lake?
Not very often. So I've seen a couple big seiches, but nothing that's really affected like the Drowned River mouth lakes. I think they're just like so big that if it does happen, it's not noticeable. Like you'll see things on like the Grand River, for instance. I don't know what goes on there, but it'll like kind of fluctuate throughout the day sometimes. And I don't know what's really driving that, but it's not like anything too major. But yeah, we get the upwellings like I was talking about earlier, and that's like a big thing to, you want to be in the know on that for sure. But you know, we haven't seen any crazy water levels. Like east side of the state, like Saginaw Bay, it will happen over there where the water will just blow out, and like you could get like stranded from, you know, putting your boat back on the trailer.
Oh, jeez.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. Oh, I can't.
Same with the west end of Lake Erie. That happens there too.
Yeah. It happens here when we get a big east wind. Like we get huge seiches and whatever they're called, like 10, 12-foot swings sometimes in the fall due to gale wind force. Like if we get a 60-mile-an-hour southwest wind up the lake, it just sucks all the water from Ohio and puts it right into Buffalo and rises the water 10 feet.
Do you guys get a lot of flooding and stuff from that then? Or
yeah,
are you pretty prepared?
They're pretty prepared. There's a lot of high sea walls the way they built up, but like there's a creek by my house, Elliott Creek, and it's probably like 3 miles from the Niagara River. But when we get those big seiches, all the water rushes into there and it'll come up to the roadways. So it's a lot of water that moves.
How are the average water levels over there right now?
Last year, I want to say it was closer to normal. This year, I think we're up maybe about like a foot. I haven't really looked at the gauge, but 3 years ago, we were like 5 foot high, like really high. Yeah.
Crazy. Like we were still like at historical highs, like the last couple years over here. And like things look way different this spring. Like it's gone down quite a bit, like more towards like normal, but it's just like, I had my boat floating over there a couple years ago. Now it's like dry land.
Oh, geez. And that's because, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, I think Lake Michigan is the last lake that drains because it's like a standalone, right?
Yeah, so the water kind of like separate for sure.
Yeah. So it kind of has to be like sucked into Huron for the true natural flow of it to work.
Yeah.
So it'd take a lot longer for it to drain. Yeah.
Yeah, when you fish all like the Finger Lakes and the inland lakes that we have here, you don't even think about stuff like this. Because the Great Lakes are just like, they're mind blowing to me. They really are. I love them. Like some of the stuff like that Andy will tell me that I just never even thought of before just blows my mind. What's
mini oceans?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. It all changes so much. Like with our drowned rivermouth lakes over here, like when all that water came up like a few years ago, like it was the most epic frog bite you'd ever seen, and like people hadn't figured it out yet. And like, it was like every tournament, I'm like, I am going to destroy them. And like, now it's like, I don't even pull the frog out because all that cover was there. It all flooded, then it all drowned out, and now it's all gone. So maybe in a decade or so, it'll come back. But yeah, just like things change so much, and it's like the water levels and whatever. And now I'm going to have to be like, oh, I don't want to run over there because I don't want to lose my lower unit where, 3 years ago, it's like just hammering down right across that.
We have some lakes that, we've gotten some pretty big rains before, but it's only like the inlets or the bays off of Lake Ontario that get flooded. But there's some of our Finger Lakes, Andy, that I wish certain parts would like get flooded the crap out of because it could be so fun.
Oh yeah. Oh, like some of the ones that have like the marshlands on them and stuff.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they're fishing down south for a little bit, it's like some of this stuff could be so much fun. You got yourself a little mini Louisiana up here in New York if it flooded.
If you could get your boat in there, you could get your kayak in there, but not a boat.
That's why I'm saying for me, because I'm in the kayak. But no, I'm really excited for tonight's topic. So Andy, let's start diving into things.
So like, we'll kind of get right into it since we know your work background already. What is the biggest threat to like the Great Lakes in general, just so everybody knows, and we'll kind of base it off of there as we go.
I mean, it's probably invasive species, but that is caused like the most changes like out there. Like mussels are a huge one. I'll get into like that right now. Like in Lake Michigan, that is like what has changed things like more than anything. Like everybody knows the zebra mussel, right? Like,
yeah.
You guys heard of the quagga mussel?
Yep.
Okay. You guys probably got them. You probably got them in mussel, but you got them in Erie, right? So
we do. Yeah.
They're like a zebra mussel on steroids, but like the thing about a quagga that's so different is like they're not limited to like, hey, I'm going to grow on that seawall over there, like that rock over there. Like, they're out in 350 feet just rolling around in the mud, like on the bottom. Like, they don't care. They don't need anything to attach to. So as far as like our fisheries, like, especially our cold water fisheries over here, like that has been like the biggest change is those mussels have just eaten all the nutrients like out of like Lake Michigan, which, places like Erie and whatnot, like they're still getting enough nutrients where, it's probably not that big of a deal, but the mussels have really like just, they've eaten it all, and maybe it'll be an okay thing at some point because, Asian carp are the next thing, that you always hear talked about.
They're so close.
And, I'm actually sort of surprised we don't have them yet, but,
don't say that curse word. Don't say
out in open Lake Michigan, the mussels might have already beaten him to the buffet. So, they're going to still have an opportunity to do well in a lot of places, but, they got maybe a little bit different barrier to get in there because there's just not as much food out in the open water as there used to be. So
if I ever hear that AC word in the Great Lakes, I will cry for a full year straight.
It will be not good. So, and I don't know, I'm surprised we haven't seen them yet. So it gives me a little hope that, maybe we won't.
I don't know. I think a spawning smallmouth would kill an Asian carp.
It might.
They're just
you don't want to make a spawning smallmouth mad. That's for sure.
So, but like the biggest thing with the mussels, like the zebra mussels, if we go way back to like the 80s, the water quality was absolutely terrible in the Great Lakes. But I've had these conversations with a good friend of mine who owns a steelhead fishing lodge, like a hostel, about the water cleanliness. And he goes, I miss the 80s because the water was so dirty, but there were so many nutrients that the plankton thrived and the alewives had something to eat. And he basically associated the rapid like ascent and decline every year of alewives based on how much runoff we have, like how much dirty water runs into the lakes. So that, I know Lake Michigan has a ton of rivers that dump into it. Do you see anything like in correlation to that for like the alewife population? Because they essentially are like the biggest bait fish in the Great Lakes now. Am I wrong there?
No, there's still the deal, like, that's what you base like the salmon fishery on and the steelhead and, all the cold water fish and all the stocking is like kind of like alewives are the big prey base. And, we had big concerns in like 2012, like things were crashing, like tons of salmon in the lake. They're just like eating all the alewives and, not enough year classes of alewife to like, keep it going. So like the nutrients, like, all our nutrients in Lake Michigan are like, coming from those rivers, like coming from places like St. Joe, the Grand. Like we actually do, we do a transect from my home base in Muskegon, like down to Grand Haven, which is like the big river mouth south of us, and like, take measurements for like chlorophyll and nutrients and like that. We do that every month. So it's kind of something we like keep an eye on. And, it's good when those things are like pumping out a lot of nutrients, but I wouldn't say that necessarily like a big nutrient year like is going to fully drive like the next big year class alewives. There's just lots of other stuff going on there, but a lot of those fish.
Go ahead. Sorry, I apologize.
A lot of those fish do use like they come into these lakes to spawn. So rather than like spawning like out in the open water, there's still some that do that. But like in Muskegon, the Grand, further south, they've come in all these places and they spawn in like coontail and along seawalls and in the channel and whatnot. So like all those places are like big nurseries for the young year alewives too. So, that's kind of like a little bit of safe haven for them. And the biggest threat to them like lately has just been predators, like too many predators, like just eating them out of house and home, like, and having enough year classes of alewives to like keep it going. And, there's a lot of like animosity and stuff like still going on with like, dudes that just think it's going to be like 1999 still. And you can just drive a boat out of the pier heads and like go catch your 5 big kings. It's just not the reality of like how the Great Lakes are. And, I think, my lab, it doesn't do anything. Like we don't even make fisheries recommendations. We're not allowed to. We're like fully research based. But, stuff that I do, like the DNR or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service can take that and look at it and be like, okay, maybe this is what's going on with the food web. Like, let's do this or do that. And, the stocking cuts and all that, like it kind of saved like the bait fish in Lake Michigan, and there's still a fishery out there for like king salmon and lake trout and all that stuff. So it's been a success, with a lot of adversity, the fisheries dealt with.
Absolutely. And it's crazy to think about. You guys had your major bait fish collapse in 2012 in Michigan. We just went through one on Ontario, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. And they essentially cut like our king salmon stocking, because I guide for them and fish for them a ton too in the fall. They basically cut it down to like a fifth of what it was.
Oh,
It went from insanity, like you could walk across salmon's backs, and we had big ones like 25-pound fish. And
yeah.
now they're like 15 to 18 pounds as a 4-year-old fish. And the good news is, I don't know how, but the alewife population just like exploded last year, like out of
That's awesome.
the blue. Like we had no alewives in the lake, and all of a sudden there's millions of them. Everyone's like, there's not a bait fish problem. I don't know why they killed all these like salmon stocking numbers, but they're like, yeah, but they're all this big.
Yeah, for sure. You got 1 year class. If something happens to
Yeah.
that 1 year class, like it's done. So I mean, there's always
Yeah.
like more to the story when it comes to that stuff. And it sucks to like have to, because your salmon fishing just won't be as good when there's not a ton of fish that they stock. There's not as many that return, and it's not as great. But you will get some bigger ones, like especially if there's a lot of bait out there. That's like one thing we saw over here. We had less fish, but like we still kept some bait around. And like last year, I think a 41-pounder was caught, which I know Ontario grows them like even bigger than we do here. But we used to never, like when I first moved out here, I didn't really hear about 30-pound kings very often, and I've heard about quite a few of them the last few years. Still have yet to handle one myself, but they're out there for sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Bailey.
I was just gonna ask a quick question. Like, to your knowledge, is there it's kind of a two-parter. To your knowledge, is there a Great Lake that's like thriving more than the rest of them? And also, is there a Great Lake that's like in trouble right now?
I think it just depends on the species. Like there's certain like refuges that certain things are doing like awesome in, like Saginaw Bay, for instance, is like exploded with walleyes, where before when there was a bunch of alewives in Huron, like they would like suppress the walleye population because they were like big predators on like larval walleyes and larval perch. So like that's exploded. Superior is probably like the least affected by like all the, external stressors, like, but it's also just not that productive of a lake compared to the rest of them. So, other than, those giant lake trout that live way out there that people go catch, that looks awesome. But, it's just not quite the same as, if you were talking about Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Ontario, there's not the people there, there's not the fish there, and it's just not as productive. But that's the most like untouched one. And then, other things like smallmouth bass are doing like pretty much great all across the board, it seems like. So, things are good for them, everywhere, but other species,
That's all that matters.
It just depends. So yeah, I just hope one day we're not like looking back on this and be like, man, those were the good old days for smallmouth in the Great Lakes.
Oh God, that's such a scary thought.
It is.
Well, I mean, everything has cycles too. Like I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago, Lake Erie was in a downward cycle on our end. We had a lot of smaller fish, not a lot of big ones. It was tough to catch 5 some days. And now like it's exploding again. Like when the Elite Series came here in 2007 and 2008, it kind of like remained a secret until the internet came about in like 2013, 2014, and people really knew. And then we kind of had like a downward spiral a little bit, but now it's just exploded again. Like
Nice.
if you go out and catch 50 fish, you had an okay day.
Wow.
So
there's always something going on. Like,
in the
if there's this much of something, like it's eating that much of something, or, especially with the Great Lakes, more so than like say an inland lake, you can have like certain weather events that can like just be terrible for a whole year class of fish. Like you get like a few of those things like piled onto each other in a row, and like you're going to have some down years. Just part of how the, water that big works, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's why fish spawn in different cycles, right? Is to help alleviate that stress, because they all spawned at once, and we had this cataclysmic weather event or all these unforeseen circumstances happening. It could just destroy a fishery.
Absolutely.
So could destroy wildlife. It's crazy how things adapt to nature itself. So kind of let's get into the next big invasive species, right? Which would be probably the goby.
Yeah.
How much has that changed the Great Lakes fisheries? We know what the goby is, but like from an ecosystem standpoint, what has it done for the good and what has it done for the better?
Great success.
Yes. For
I mean,
smallmouth.
it's done. It was when the goby first came on the scene. It was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna like get in every smallmouth nest and like they're gonna eat every bass
World's ending.
and every fish egg of whatever. And like they do like eating fish eggs. I've done lots of work on goby diets. They like fish eggs, but like they don't seem to have really like done anything really bad unless you're like a crayfish or a mottled sculpin. Like, you know, they've like kind of moved them along, you know, it seems like in a lot of places, you know, they're just, I don't know if it's because they're down in the rock crevices and, you know, they're just not letting that stuff go in there. But, you know, mottled sculpins are something that, you know, most people probably didn't even really know were around. And then, you know, crayfish, they're still around, but it's, you know, you just don't see them like you used to on the Great Lakes anyway. But I can't really like say there's anything they've done that's been like so terrible. Like everything is kind of adapted to them, and you know they filled in like especially with some of these places where like alewives crashed and whatnot. Like they've been a good like alternate food source for a ton of fish.
I'm really curious because I think the 99% I think of the fishing, you know, public and that sees a sculpin will think that's a goby because
Oh
they
yeah,
look. My question is, were sculpin around like before gobies?
yes.
Like in the same places, same everything?
Like up there in the rocks, I guess there used to be like quite a few like mottled sculpins, and not necessarily everywhere. At least like in my region of things, like around the pier heads and whatnot, there would be mottled sculpins and you know things. I've never seen one personally. I got here after gobies; they're already everywhere, but there's still sculpins like deep water and slimy sculpins out there in the lake, like where you know gobies don't affect them as much. But you know they're not a bass forage like. You're not going to see like bass eating them. They just don't get shallow enough.
So why is if they're basically almost the same thing, like these little, you know, basically swimming chicken nuggets for smallmouth, like why was there such a huge explosion with gobies when sculpin were already there?
I don't think sculpin were present in like the same exact numbers, and I don't. Maybe sculpins were
Okay.
smarter because gobies are really dumb. Like
They're so stupid.
they're really dumb. Like if you look at a sculpin's body, like they definitely can get in crevices and hide a lot. They're like a lot flatter than say a goby is. I mean, a goby, yeah, it's like a little hot dog swimming around down there. So, yeah, I don't know like why that is, and you know, if they just weren't as widespread, and you know, whatever we have going on over here is really good for gobies and pretty much all the Great Lakes, and you know, they're just another part of the food chain now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see them ever going anywhere, or you know.
I remember the PSA they had like when gobies were first here. They're like, cut off all their heads. Like when you see,
Oh
like,
yeah,
Yeah.
And it was just like it was like it reminded me of like the I don't even know it was like the Renaissance area with the pitchforks and stuff when they're like trying to like get rid of. But yeah, stupid point. Anyways, something that's actually that was really funny that Andy and I, when we get bored and you're catching a bunch of fish on Erie, we catch a goby. We play goby ball. So you have flip flops and one guy's in the front. You pitch the goby like a baseball, and the other guy flip flop.
And they usually swim back down to the bottom because
They're fine.
they're pretty hardy little critters, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Like, but I remember like going back when because it was what like 2000-ish when the gobies came into the Great Lakes, right?
A long time ago now.
Yeah.
Like they're here, and you still see people like I see it at on the pier. Like there'll be dead gobies that somebody caught. Like you just throw it back at this point. Like your one goby you caught is not going to make a difference to like hurt the goby population down there. So
yeah, we should be treating the gobies better than the smallmouth at this point.
They're gold.
Yeah,
but
Gobi
it's
eating,
fun.
my friend.
Like to my point there, I remember there's a little harbor here about a half hour north of where I live now called Wilson, and there's a pier out there, and every summer day you go out there, be like 10 to 15 people fishing for rock bass, but they're worm and bobbers. and they would all be getting pissed because they're catching gobies. So it was like a murder scene of gobies. Like the entire pier would be
Seagulls having
covered
a
with
heyday.
gobies, and then seagulls coming down and trying to eat them, but they wouldn't eat them because they were like so fresh. So you'd watch them like pick them up and drop them, and now they just eat them like they're candy. But it's just like the retrospect, it was foreign. They tried to kill it. Humans were killing it, and now we know like they're like the greatest little protein snacks a fish could ever ask for.
I wonder
Like,
if there was a boom, not only in the weight of an average smallmouth, of the average seagull because of the amount of gobies being put out on the deck. There's some rock solid seagulls out there, man. Like they're on
oh, that's hilarious.
It's not just McDonald's with fries that they get left at the parking lot. It's gobies too.
Yeah. So like continuing on the goby talk, because we know they're a very important invasive part of the Great Lakes ecosystem now. Do they have one spawn cycle? Do they spawn multiple times a year? Like, what is the average size goby that you think a fish eats? What is the biggest goby you've ever seen? Kind of like keep us on this train wreck of goby talk.
So they'll spawn multiple times a year. Like they don't really care. Like they don't spawn obviously when it's like really cold, but they're like in the summertime. There's always some gobies spawning. If you ever see like giant black gobies, like that's a male goby like in the spawn. If you ever see one of those, like they'll be like just black as night. Like you're like that one is spawning, and they're always huge and they are always mean. Like
yeah,
so
they're like this big. Like
they're huge. Inches. I mean, they get huge. We'll see 8 inches. Like whether we're like in some of our trawls or like on the pier, like they get. I mean, not so big that a smallmouth can't eat them, but you know they get pretty large. As far as like the average size they eat, you know, about the size of a tube or a tube to a Ned rig. Like it seems like that's always the size I see like puked up. And you know, the general population of gobies, like when we do a trawl and there's a bunch of gobies in it, like that's like the most popular size range. So you know, it's not surprising that's what they're eating. I've never seen like where there's just tons and tons of big ones, or where fish are puking up really huge ones like on my deck or anything like that. So I don't know if they'd necessarily target those, but yeah, they spawn all the time. They're like super prolific, and they go
rabbits.
They go everywhere too. Like we get them, like they'll be up in the rivers, or people think they just are out there in Lake Michigan. No, they're like all over. They're in grass beds. They're, you name it. Like there's gobies around if it connects to Lake Michigan.
That's such a good point too, because like on one of our lakes, we have a few different finger lakes where we've talked about it before, so I'm not afraid to talk about it again. That are connected to Lake Ontario, so therefore there are gobies in some of these finger lakes. But I've quite literally caught largemouth flipping, 4 or 5 foot of grass that spit up a goby on the deck. Like it's pretty crazy to see. And that was going to lead me into my next question: is like, are gobies not only just helping? Because I feel like smallmouth have gotten all the spotlight about this introduction of gobies, but like, are they helping every species, like from perch to smallmouth to walleye to drum to?
I mean, everything eats them. I don't know if maybe there's some species they aren't like, so there's, whether it's something with a spawn or something like that, they're not great for, but like everything utilizes them. Like lake trout, like totally switch their diets when the water's cold here to like, I'm going to eat gobies. Like that's what I do, is eat gobies and pretty much nothing else. Whereas before, they were more pelagic and, doing lots of other stuff. But yeah. And, perch, they're puking up gobies when we're ice fishing, and, just everything is like utilized them. So I got to say they've got benefits for pretty much most things, unless you're sculpin or a crawdad.
Yeah.
As far as I know. I mean, there could be something out there. I mean, maybe they're like the missing link to, why whitefish recruitment isn't doing so hot right now, but we haven't figured it out yet.
Because we were talking about that offline, like the whole whitefish thing. They're eating, what was it, like some type of larva, like that they're eating, larvae, did you say?
Like the whitefish aren't. I mean, the whitefish are larvae like that I'm catching, and they're eating plankton. Like,
gotcha.
They're just like, so a lot of their stuff is like how much plankton is out there, like how much weight and size they can gain. But yeah, and gobies will eat larval fish. Like I've done goby diets with larval fish in them, and they'll eat anything. Like they're vicious.
They're mean.
They are,
hungry
dude.
little.
You get one in a trawl, and then you like it's one of those like big, like 8 inches. Like you put your finger in its mouth, like they will go, like
Yeah,
they
it's
will
like
bite.
your
They will
drop shot.
bite down on you as fast as they can. We always
Can
try.
we-
Like the joke out there is like I try to get him to like stick on somebody's ear, like it's an earring, but I haven't got it to work yet.
Just
when
be
your
glad
buddy's
they
not
don't
paying
have teeth.
attention.
Yeah,
They make for
Have little-
great things to throw at your tournament partner.
for sure.
Oh, 100%.
I relate them to the boom of hogs down south, where they literally eat everything and they're just like literally cannot be stopped because they have babies multiple times a year.
For sure.
Sounds exactly like the gobies. See, here's something I want to get into because being that I'm all about the smallmouth, and I talk about, earlier in the show of there's those people that neglect every other living species beyond a bass, and I am
Bailey is one of them.
Yes, just say I'm completely at fault. Like there's this time period, and Andy can attest to it. Like it seems like about a month or so after the spawn, where it almost like Andy, you've talked about it, where it's like there's certain class of smallmouth are almost impossible to find. Do you think there's something to either they just don't eat during a certain time of year or don't eat gobies, or they switch to like a roaming class of bait fish like an alewife certain times of the year? Like, will they switch on and off from a certain forage? Like, is there anything that you've studied that can kind of answer some of that?
Well, there's like definitely certain times where like they key in on like alewives, like specifically, like for instance, where I'm at, we get these upwellings. There's no smallmouth to be found like in the harbors anywhere. Like they're out in Lake Michigan doing something, like presumably chasing alewives because like you can't really find them. Get an upwelling, all the bait comes in, and they're boom, here are the smallies. Like so, they're definitely like keying in on those alewives and chasing that pelagic bait. Like, and I think they follow it. Like I don't know where they go. I haven't found it. Like my boss has caught a smallmouth in 100 feet of water in Lake Michigan in a gill net. So, they definitely go out there, and it's all sizes though. We've never seen like a certain size of fish that just like, disappears. So they all kind of follow that, but there's a big alewife thing over here that they really like.
So
Andy?
I'm going to segue on this question. When you get alewife eaters to goby eaters, right? I find those alewife eaters tend to be more slender, like bullet fish.
Okay.
Like, because they're like more river system fish over here. All of our alewife eaters are like river fish.
Okay.
And then the goby eaters will be like blimps, like bulbous, lazy blimps. I was wondering if you see that same thing.
We don't. Like, we get like we've got like the resident fish that live in our lakes and rivers, and they are slender. And I think that's because they're chasing shad and eating crawdads and eating gobies like in the lake. It's just not as easy for them. And yeah, they run the rivers too. But those fish from Lake Michigan, whether they're eating alewives or they're eating like gobies in the spring, like they're just, it's like you catch one and it's like got just big meaty lips on it, and it's like that thing is from Lake Michigan, like it doesn't live here. So, and I don't know where they go. Like I gotta tell you this funny story like first about a Lake Michigan fish that I recently handled, which was a total surprise. I didn't catch it, but it's like the biggest smallmouth I've ever had my hands on. I went off the pier the other day. Like I was going to go make some coho casts, whatever, try to catch one of them. There's some old man out there. He's drowning some spawn for steelhead or whatever. I'm like, you catching anything? He's like, no, but I got a bass. I'm like, what do you mean you got a bass? He's like, do you want it? I'm like, no, I don't really want it. Like they're out of season and I don't want to eat it anyway. He's like, it's on that rod right there. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll go take it off the hook for you. I go climb down the rocks and about like fall in the lake because like this smallmouth is like, I don't know how big it was. I'd love to put a number on it. I saw one that was like just under 6 the other day, and like this wasn't really even close to it.
Whew.
But I go down to unhook it, and I'm like, where's the hook in this thing? Like there's no hook in it. The dude caught it on a single egg fishing for Menominee whitefish with a sabiki rig hook that's like smaller than any ice fishing rig I'd ever use. So yeah, they're out there doing something, and that fish will be in where you can catch it for like a couple weeks, and then they spawn and they go back out. But
so wait a minute, backtrack. It was on a random rod. Like, it
Dude,
wasn't-
they just he casted a rod out there. It's sitting on the bottom. It's got this tiny hook that's like tinier than tiny with a single steelhead egg on it.
okay.
The smallmouth decided it was going to eat a single steelhead egg
I'm
today.
so stupid.
So,
I
and
swear.
this dude, I'm like, do you want a picture with this fish? Because this is the fish of a lifetime. He could
Is it
care
good?
less. I'm like, dude, like, and he's like, wow,
Oh.
the bass guys will be real happy you're here. I'm like, yeah, I'm a bass guy. I'm pretty happy I'm here to like let this thing go. And hopefully it would like imprint on me and maybe I could see it in a tournament
It
someday.
makes
But
me
Oh my
so
God.
mad.
it's like, dang, how do you not appreciate how big this thing is? It's like,
If you had to guess, if you had to put a number on it, like,
I would say like I've never handled a 7-pounder, but like it had to be like, I don't think it was like 8 or anything like that, but like it had to have been over 7. Like I've
oh
seen
my
a
gosh.
decent number over 6. I have a buddy who always fishes with me, and like I can't catch a 6-pounder to save my life, but I've seen him catch like 7 6-pound smallmouth in my boat or his boat or whatever. I'm like, you're a jerk. Can you let me catch one time?
Isn't that funny how that happens?
It is. It's so annoying, but yeah, he loves doing it. It's real frustrating for me. But yeah, it was the biggest one I've ever handled. It was
That's
cool
great.
to be able to see it. But yeah, so got sidetracked a little bit there, but had to tell you guys that story.
No, but I appreciated that, and it just
So.
further it proves the theory that smallmouth are way dumber than we realize, and we give them way too much credit.
For sure, for
I
sure.
think we can say that about all fish.
All fish,
personally
absolutely.
speaking.
Yeah.
I
Because
do have. Go ahead.
I was gonna say they have one goal in life, right? And that's to eat, spawn, and swim.
That's it.
Like,
And see, this
Pretty
is the
much
part
it.
where fishing drives me up a wall, where like that, just like, wow, that fish would eat probably anything in front of his face. But then there's times where like the guy that caught him good in the tournament was in the same area as you, and he was throwing, some green pumpkin weird shit on a Carolina rig that had purple flakes, and you're throwing just green pumpkin on a Carolina rig, and you can't catch him.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
where
understand
fishing
it.
drives me crazy, man.
that's why it's fishing and not catching.
I know. Dang smallmouth.
I'm trying to find a picture of this absolute giant that my buddy caught on my boat a few years ago that I didn't have a scale on me at the time, but it was over 7 pounds. So I'm just curious how close.
I'm curious. So, with your job and being able to study all of these different factors that are happening in some of your local waters, that's a beast.
I would say it was like in that ballpark or bigger than that. Like, yeah, it was a monster. Like I didn't get a good picture of it, and I was like worried it was gonna like die because it had been sitting in this little pool in the rocks.
He's
I'm
a
like, I just
big
want to
dude,
get
too.
it back. But yeah, dude, it was a monster.
So my buddy who caught that fish is almost 300. Well, he's actually
Oh,
probably
geez.
300 pounds and 5'6", and he wasn't even long. He's got short little like T-Rex arms. So like he was maybe like here away from his body. The fish was 23.25 inches long.
Dude,
And he
that's
listens to
mega.
the show, and I'm sure he really appreciates you describing him like that.
Oh, he'll probably laugh.
He's got
honestly.
T-Rex arms. Oh my
So,
gosh! But
the
Jeff,
thing-
I'm sorry, Andy, to cut you off.
You're good, dude.
I'm curious with your job and what you do, being able to study the things you do. Does that help you at all from a bass fishing standpoint and like a tournament deal? Like,
Not really, because it's so big lake focused. Like, everything I do is like mostly like looking at plankton or looking at small fish or looking at everything that doesn't have to do with a smallmouth. But I do think it makes me like think about things in a different way. Like, if I see what they're eating, like I want to know what they're eating or like why they're doing what, maybe a little more in depth. Like, and like I think about like, hey, it's this time of year, and like now there's all these young year shad going on, or this young year this, and like they're really keying in on that. So my location at work maybe helps me out a little bit because I know when they're kind of around the channel. But as far as like actual stuff I do like out on the lake, not really. Wish we could do a project where we put some trackers in them or did something with smallmouth, but
is that legal?
oh, absolutely. I have a
Like,
permit.
for you, I'm sure, but like for Joe Schmo like me that just randomly stumbles upon a tracker to put him in bass, is that illegal?
I don't know. I mean, probably not, but who's going to catch you? So, you could probably do it in a way, but it would be probably expensive. Like the only way to really, well, I guess that we've done, not us, but the DNR has done tracking studies like on Cisco's and stuff like that, is like they put a pinger in the channel and they'll put a implant in the fish. And so when the fish swims by it, like it just takes a ping off that fish right there. Like it doesn't track it, way out in the lake somewhere, but like says, hey, I swam through this channel and went out into Lake Michigan, or swam through this channel and went into Lake Michigan.
What I've thought about for so long, and it stemmed from like when I was in high school watching Shark Week, when they would tag these sharks and would literally show them like your Google Maps route of like over a year, like where they go. I just been so curious in some of these places to put one on a fish just to see where they go. Like
Oh my gosh.
How far does a largemouth actually go? How far does a smallmouth actually go?
It would be incredible on some of these Great Lakes fisheries, like what they actually go do. Like,
has somebody not done that yet? To your knowledge?
I don't think they've done some tagging and recapture work on like Beaver Island, which is out in Lake Michigan. And so there's a study there where like they'll set like trap nets or whatever, like around the spawn and like tag fish, or maybe they did do pingers. There's a study out there. I think they actually did do some sort of pingers, and it shows like kind of where they went like out off the islands and like spent their summers. So, and those fish like kind of stay in that region, it seems, but they're still traveling a little ways.
I'm convinced because there's always that one guy in a tournament trail that always catches big bass, and it's about the same weight. They probably do that and they just go find them wherever they're at. They use their tracker.
I hope not.
Could you imagine though? Like,
no, it is okay. I want to clarify there because I just brought it up this point. That is not why I want to do that study.
No, for sure. Purely an informational thing, and it would be super interesting. So
it would be. It'd be extremely intriguing,
especially with those pelagic smallmouth. Just to understand like what they're doing. Be like, wow, why are you suspended on the thermocline 125 foot down over 600 feet of water? Like, what are you doing? There's no bait fish around.
Can we confirm that it's just the fish and we're just not that bad? Like, and it would just be super cool to see. I love to see that, something sort of study, or I don't know. It's it's more of your pay grade than my pay grade. I don't think I have the means to do anything like that.
The problem is,
make it your vendetta. I will pay you to do that.
I would love to, but the thing is with bass, they just do such a great job at taking care of themselves. Like they don't get the love from the scientific community, like especially like up here in the north, when we have like, I mean, pretty much as long as the habitat's like good, like you're gonna have bass. Like if they've got a place to reproduce, they're young to recruit and stuff to eat, like they're pretty dang resilient compared to like so many other these species that need to be babysat and like stocked and all this other stuff.
That
Lake
brings
trout,
a really
Cisco,
good
whitefish,
all that stuff.
All right, I got a ball to drop on you because I know we're talking smallmouth and Great Lakes here, but like, what's your take on spraying grass? Talking about bass that are resilient.
Oh, I hate that crap. Like, but that's another point. Even in the lakes,
science on our side, at least.
The problem is we don't have money on our side. So how
yes. So
money is on the wrong side of that argument. The lake associations just seem to get their way, and like I swear these companies are just like, hey, like they always claim they're like spraying for this invasive or that invasive, but yet like every piece of grass in the entire lake is gone. Like
because they just carpet bomb it. They're like, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Do you guys have starry stonewort out there yet?
I believe it's starting to show up in some of our finger lakes, like the bigger ones. Yeah,
that is not good. Like that stuff where I'm from in Southeast Michigan, like spray. That's all we're ever gonna do. That stuff like can't even be killed by spray. Like it just like knocks it down and just like carpets the whole bottom. Mm-hmm. So you'll never get like a grass bed back there. Like it's just going to be covered. Starry
stonewort. It looks like this, Bailey.
It's the worst of the worst. I mean, it looks kind of like sandgrass, but it's like spongy and like
Doesn't it smell really bad?
Sandgrass it does smell, but like sandgrass is the stuff that's like really skunky, and like sandgrass like will like crumble up in your hands. Like this stuff is like spongy and like you can almost like stretch it. So that's kind of how you can tell the difference. But it's nasty stuff. You guys don't want it.
Yeah, I lost all faith in our local our state DEC, our Department of Environmental Conservation, when they give you the spiel of like, oh, we're trying to spray hydrilla and all that crap.
Yeah.
When one of our lakes has both, and that's one of them they've been carpet bombing. And I brought, just to test, we have people at all the ramps throughout the summer that, will do the inspections on your boat to try to get the grass off and whatnot. And I brought them back hydrilla and I brought them back milfoil. And I asked the person who's inspecting which one is milfoil, and they picked hydrilla. And I'm like, we're fucked. We're screwed.
Yeah, for sure.
There's
no end game to it. Like, what's the plan here? Like, you're just going to keep bombing it and bombing it and bombing it. Like, I'm sorry, but I'd rather have some invasive weed that provides a little bit of vertical structure than have nothing out there for like young ear bass or like just like the energetics of all that stuff. Like a largemouth's got to work so much harder if it's got to swim instead of be lazy as can be and sit next to a clump of grass and eat whatever swims by.
Yeah.
They won't do anything till someone grows like a third eyeball after they've been swimming in a lake for however long. That will be
when you start getting all that decaying and decomposing grass too, then you get your horrible algae blooms and then you get the mold on the water and it's just not good.
For sure. Well, I think one of the things that, we saw it over here a few years ago, and like, this is just like, I don't know if it necessarily really happened, but it's my theory. Like, we never really had a big algae bloom on these lakes before. So we had all that high water and basically there wasn't enough sunlight to get down to like a lot of the places, like a lot of the giant grass flats just didn't grow grass, like, because the water was kind of dirty from a bunch of rain and it was super high and sunlight could not penetrate. So it was like hundreds and hundreds of acres of grass in this lake that just weren't there. It wasn't because it was poisoned, which was good, but then like we just had this massive algae bloom. Like I've never seen it before, just like pea soup. I think it's just all of those nutrients I got in the lake, like that normally the grass would take up. Like the algae was like, oh, hey, this is pretty good stuff. Like I'm going to bloom instead of this grass. And they just kind of took it all and, ran with it. So there's like lots of other consequences other than just like killing all the grass, and if you want a swimming pool, people will just go get a swimming pool because you can't make a lake a swimming pool. It just doesn't work.
Well, and the fact that they spray all this stuff they don't even swim in, like they're spraying in places where people fish when all of them go out, well, at least boaters with common sense, which I guess is probably hard to ask for. And they go to the middle of the lake, you'd think, but they're spraying, I saw places where they were spraying on one of our lakes that doesn't have any docks. It's a stretch of no docks. Like if it's not even like a beach area, like there's designated beach areas. It just makes absolutely no sense.
Just pointless. Or spraying like some hump out in the middle of the lake that, has like 10 acres of grass on it. And it's like, why go kill that? Like, what is that doing out there? Like, there's no reason to go kill that.
Well, and then the other issue too is like now the largemouth are no longer ambush predators. They're out there just roaming, eating everything. But those baby bait fish have nowhere to hide either.
For sure. That was bad for everything.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's like times that maybe like some chemicals are needed, whatever. But for the most part, I cannot stand it. And it's like, it's way out of control. So it sounds like you guys are very similar to Michigan, where like the lake associations and the lake spraying companies kind of get what they want. And I don't think anybody.
You have grass, blow it up. Is like,
just see ya.
This is like the biggest problem. And it's something that I have been so pissed about, especially when I try to make some headway, when I try to call our different, sections around New York to try to have conversations. And they say they'll get back to you and they never do. And then they try to have a conversation, but then they can't have a conversation. The problem is we don't have a dang seat at the table. Like we're not in that discussion. We don't have a voice. And as soon as you try to, they don't even let you. It pisses me off beyond belief.
We're at the start, like kicking down doors and knocking on windows.
Yeah, there we go.
We should just get some good old boys to camp out the ramp.
Good old boys.
Send the sprayer on down the road that way.
We need someone on the inside. I think I'm going to quit my job and become a DEC officer so I could be the man on the inside.
There you go.
And that way I know when these scheduled sprayings are. We're just going to slash the tires.
There you go.
That'll show.
Yeah,
them.
Now that it's on the podcast.
Yeah.
So that happens, they're coming for you, Bailey. Just remember, just sign your own death warrant.
Now, do they spray all your guys' lakes over there, or like
Seems
do the
like
big finger lakes like get left alone or anything like that?
Nope.
No,
they are
everything. Okay.
Carpet bomb.
Damn.
Yeah.
We have one lake here that is, probably what, Annie, 5-6 years ago. I'm talking about Canisius. was absolutely beautiful. Like
Oh, you get milfoil
milfoil
canopies and
everywhere.
18 foot of water.
Yeah.
And others.
You could throw a top water all day long. Like wherever you fished, it made sense. Like there was green grass, but now it's like it went from throwing a chatterbait, flipping a jig, throwing a frog, all that stuff, the fun stuff, to and taking at least 20 pounds every single tournament of the year to win to like 15 pounds, and you're soaking a drop shot or throwing a random, like you got guys scoping with a swim bait out in the abyss.
Wow.
Like, and the place is like just like chocolate, like chocolate, like chalky, like white, green, gross stuff. Like I wouldn't want to jump in it. And it's
Why do
just,
homeowners want that? Like, I don't understand why anyone would want to look at that.
To
Like, I'd rather
ride
look
their
at some
tubes
healthy
around the
grass.
middle of the lake.
oh, you know what makes me mad too? So this place is famous
Oh.
for weed mats by the docks. We're not
Yeah.
allowed to put anything in our lakes, but they can put a weed mat in their lake.
Yeah.
Wow.
1 + 1 does not equal 2 here, folks.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
good at
pretty
math,
brutal.
but I can understand that. This whole subject, we could go on for a couple hours
for
because it
sure,
riles
for
me
sure.
up.
So I kind of want to digress back here into the Great Lakes talk though.
My bad.
So there is a big issue right at the forefront, and that's ice. How much ice is on the Great Lakes? And it controls the entire ecosystem of the Great Lakes with the ice flow. It churns up the bottom and the shallow water and creates all this fresh nutrients. From my understanding of studies, Lake Erie every year seems to freeze 100% solid. But what is happening in the other Great Lakes, and why is the ice so important so our viewers understand that whole aspect?
So mostly you're keeping the water we have here is like a big part of that. So if we don't get a lot of ice cover, we get a lot of evaporation over the winter time.
Mhm.
And part of the reason we had that super high water a few years ago is we had those super cold winters and tons of ice. So we didn't lose. It was like 2 years in a row of like really hard winters. We didn't lose any water, and just keep lake levels up, and keep nutrients. Like it was like a big deal. And it's also like super important. I mentioned the whitefish thing. Like we know that if there's like more ice, like they do better.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that is just the waves and whatnot beat their eggs up and all that too much if there's just not something to kind of be like a buffer zone for them. So ice is important for sure. But
And then, but like on the other retrospect, isn't a warmer winter like less ice better for the alewife
yes,
population?
yeah,
So
definitely.
it's like catch 22,
Yeah.
right? It's like we want more whitefish, but we want more alewives to sustain the salmonoid fishery, which brings in all of our money. Like it's
For sure. And
it-
it's interesting too, because I mean, if you look at it like just black and white, like what's a native species and what's not, like a salmon and an alewife are both invasive species.
Yeah.
Like
we
they're
planted
here
one and the
now.
other one
We
showed
all
up. Yeah.
we all like them. Like who doesn't like them? Everybody does, but they really are like also not supposed to be here. So yeah, it's sort of weird, but like it's just a dynamic thing to manage, like, and not everything is good for everything. So as long as you can maintain some sort of balance, it's a good thing.
Got it. So I'm gonna I got another thought that just popped in my head with alewives. So they've done a big study on them on Lake Ontario, and I'm sure they did it on Michigan. They create like a thiamine deficiency in
Yeah.
salmonoid. Does
Yeah.
that happen in like other species as well that eat them, or is it specifically tailored to salmon? Because but the point I'm trying to get to is we've been trying to bring back an Atlantic salmon fishery in Lake Ontario for like 30 years, and it does nothing. Like we'll get a couple of real big ones, but out of like the hundreds of thousands they put in, there's zero return. And I'm wondering, is that thiamine deficiency maybe also what's affecting the whitefish population, that they're just not being able to spawn properly?
I don't think it will bother the whitefish much, just because they're not necessarily eating alewives,
Fair enough.
as a regular part of their diet. But
Yeah.
like lake trout, like that is like absolute truth. Like when there was tons of alewives, it was terrible for like natural reproduction of lake trout. So maybe that's what's going on with the Atlantics over there. But yeah, that's like a known thing. But with salmon, like kings, it's not as big a deal. Like we still have like pretty good natural reproduction in a lot of our rivers like to the north of us here. So
Mhm.
Atlantic so are just like they're sort of a weird fish. Like they haven't really played with them much in Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, like St. Mary's River, like Lake Huron
Yeah.
area. Like that's like a big place for them. And I don't know if they're naturally reproducing at all or it's whatever, but they have a good fishery for them there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the only place that you really hear about like the
Mhm.
Atlantic salmon taking off. And I wonder if it's due to the fact that Huron had that huge alewife crash that allowed them to thrive.
Yeah, Huron is like very diverse with like you could have a fish board of all sorts of crap on there because there's just so much different stuff going on. I think they got some smelt over there. We're actually seeing like some more smelt in Lake Michigan right now too, which is kind of cool. But yeah, they have a much like wider diet over there, and
Mhm.
like Atlantics will eat like other stuff too. They don't necessarily have to eat fish, but um,
Hmm.
why they don't naturally reproduce, I don't really know.
Interesting.
Fair.
Browns are the same way. Like browns don't really like natural reproduction is like none for them. It's like basically all sustained by stocking. Um, steelhead, like they'll reproduce, and then kings and coho as well. But it's all still like very heavily driven by stocking.
It's like 70-30 stock to wild fish. And that's the next thing I was bringing up is my buddy Shane, who owns that Salmon River Lodge up here in Pulaski, New York. He's like, on years that we see a big dip in the alewife population, our natural reproduction, like 3 years later, is like almost 50-50 because we clip all of our kings. But as the alewife population drops, we see more natural reproduction,
Yeah,
which
interesting.
he's like, we cut stocking numbers, but we have more fish than we ever thought we would have, and it's because we have more wild.
Yeah,
It's crazy how the ecosystem can balance itself out.
it definitely figures out a way, which is sort of cool.
Yeah.
But
Fish are
I
stupid.
do have a theory I want to share with you guys about gobies that I was gonna try to get in earlier, but like
Yeah.
just
Fair enough.
like one of the reasons I think like they have like made such a huge impact like with the smallmouth is I don't think anybody's done like a study on this or anything, but like I think it like
Sounds like you're volunteering.
I would love to, but I think it's just like I think it like has given them like a prey item like at some certain time of the year that they like didn't have before, and so they have like a new like high calorie intake at some certain time of the year where maybe they didn't eat that much, like or maybe they had to chase bait around and it's like late fall, now they can sit next to a rock and like eat gobies. And
Yeah.
I think there's like some certain time of year that like that really drives like how fat they are, because they definitely eat other crap too. Like St. Clair, they're like chasing perch around and like they're chasing alewives around, but like some point they're eating gobies throughout the year. And there's a lot of other species that like when the water's cold, like they eat gobies. And I think maybe something similar is going on to like that didn't happen before that they've kind of like really keyed in on.
It's kind of crazy that you say that too, because we have a very prominent winter hole in Buffalo for smallmouth in like late November, December, and Bailey can attest to this. And I know those fish are eating gobies because it's in a very rocky area. How many fish did you catch that day last December, Bailey?
Which one? They were both
The
over
one, yeah, the one you went with Destin and Jeff,
over 100.
and they're all like 4 to 4
Sounds like a
pounds
great
smallmouth.
wintering hole.
I think we had 29 pounds.
Dang. And they eat during the winter too. Like,
Yeah,
I have an ice fishing spot that like we straight up destroy. And yeah, they eat, and like you can see them on the graph. Like they're not just like sitting there like swimming up to it and being like, yeah, maybe I'll eat this. Like they move pretty quick down there, like on the ice too. So
That's
I think
crazy.
they eat all winter long in places. And
smallmouth definitely do better in cold water than
for sure.
largemouth.
For sure.
Like they love like that cold river water, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're having issues like out west. Like we're kind of jumping away from the Great Lakes here real fast, but like trout fishermen out west, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming are like kill all the smallmouth.
Oh yeah, they're on the
Because
kill list for sure.
yeah, they're like infiltrating these cold water trout streams that don't get over like 45-50 degrees and are thriving.
No, they're gonna do
and
well
getting
there.
yeah.
bunch
It's
of
just
fat
like,
trout to eat and lots of bugs. I mean, they're going to do just fine for sure. It'll be hard to eradicate them. It's like we were saying earlier, like bass just do a great job at taking care of themselves. With the habitats
yeah.
there, like you're probably not going to stop it.
Like, oh, this is where a brown trout live. This is perfect
Yeah.
for me underneath this undercut bank with nice oxygenated water. I think I'll live here my whole life unless I have to spawn.
For sure. It's what I think why like bass are like a big invasive species in other parts of the world. Like, I think Japan, they're like people don't like them in certain places there. It's their total introduced thing over there and they do great. So we're lucky that like we had them to start with, so we didn't have to worry about them taking over the world. But
that should be illegal for those two words to be in a sentence.
Taking over the world in a bass.
Oh no, I'm saying bass and an invasive.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, but then they put them in places in like South Africa, but they do explode wherever.
Dude, they have giants in South Africa. Like when they had the Worlds there, I think it took like 36 pounds to win.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like they have freak giants there.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Oh,
insane.
man.
But Andy, you got anything left for Jeff before we hit him with our last question?
No, I would like to maybe dive into this again as more studies come out. And if you can do that Gobi thing, like that would be cool to just talk about the Gobi study.
Yeah.
Just because, that was the point I wanted to tell you that my buddy was telling me now that I just remembered about Gobis real quick. You know how smallmouth used to live to be like 20, 21, 22 years old? They did a study, and I'll see if I can get it from them and send it over to you. But they found the average life of a smallmouth is like decreased in half around Lake Erie because it's so shallow and warm. It gets warm, but like they're catching 6-pounders like in nettings that are like 7 years old.
Need one of those fish to live to like 15 now. But that is nuts. Like, and that's a really like interesting study. That be interesting. Like if they actually did look into like whatever physiological things are going on in the fish to actually make it like get that big and like not live nearly as long as they used to.
And my buddy Scott, he's like, he used to be like an old meathead, like big bodybuilder. He's like, if you think about it like this, it's like dry heaving whey protein into your mouth for like 3 scoops. That's like the equivalent of a smallmouth eating a handful of gobies. He's like, they're just little protein morsels, and they swim around and get big and eat more and get big. He's like, it's an endless food supply chain. It's like if you go to Wendy's and you order a cheeseburger, fries, and dip it in your Frosty, you're probably going to get big too.
That's a good point.
It's a very good point.
Fair enough. It's like it's like having ice cream in your freezer all the time, right? Like they're just there. They know where they are. They don't have to chase them. They can eat them and live in the same spot. It's like, French fry.
They definitely don't have to move far. That's like one of the crazy things about gobies too is, there just be so many in like just a square yard or square meter, like down there on the bottom. Like they get so close to each other and like they're very like, they're kind of mean, but like they don't seem to bother like being all near each other. And, you don't have to work that hard if you're a bass to eat one for sure.
I picture that scene from The Grinch where he's like eating the glass because just eating because I'm bored. Sounds like a smallmouth. That's amazing.
I guess I have to eat you now because you're out and not in the rock, so I don't have to work.
Yeah, it's like Gobi's in front of its face. He goes, well, if you're just going to twist my arm, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, dude, seriously, we appreciate you joining us tonight. I learned a lot. And I think, Andy, I think Jeff needs to be our our fisheries biologist correspondent.
Yeah.
I think we'll call it.
I'd be up for that for sure.
Heck yeah. Be careful what you ask for because I'll call you up a lot.
I'm in. I had a great time, and I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. So, Bailey, do you want to hit him with the last question before he goes?
Yeah, let's do it. So, I feel like we haven't been able to ask this question in a while, so I'm excited.
It's been a minute.
So, everyone that's new to the show gets asked this question. And that is if you could sit down with 3 different individuals, have a steak and a beer, three different individuals that they could be alive 1,000 years ago. They could be alive now. They do not have to be just the fishing industry. They could be sport idols as a kid. Basically, who would you invite to have a steak and a beer and pick their brain.
Ooh, this
Why?
is a tough
And
one.
why?
This is a tough one. Number one, I'd have to say my grandpa, because he just knows, like, he did all the stuff. So I'd love
Did
to
all the stuff.
I'd love to like pick his brain just about like just to hear some stories and whatnot again and
Heck yeah.
and all that. I have to say him. Man,
I like that answer.
This is a tough one.
Any childhood heroes?
Childhood heroes.
Maybe from like a sport you played, or maybe if you're like because you're a science guy and you like.
Okay, I got one. Steven Ranella would be another one I'd like to sit down.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, he's I'd like to sit down and pick his brain and talk to him just about whatever. And then we're just gonna keep rolling with that theme. And I'm gonna go with Hank Shaw. I don't know if you guys know who Hank Shaw is, but like I'm big into like hunting and wild game cooking and all that. So we're just gonna like, I feel like if I had those three together, like
you'd have some
be
amazing
it'd be an interesting dynamic because like
Amazing.
my grandpa was a big trapper, so him and Steven Ranella would like have tons of crazy stuff to talk about. And then Hank Shaw just seems like a super interesting dude. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that'd be we'd have a good time for sure.
Oh, dude, that would be a fun 3 because you'd be having like premium elk steaks or something like that.
Oh yeah,
the last 2 you picked, like, yeah, you'd be dining well that night.
Absolutely. Let's make that happen.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll clip it. We'll tag them, and peer pressure them into having that dinner.
There we go.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That is my goal one of these days, Andy. Is one of our guests that one of their 3. We're gonna make the 3 happen. Probably won't happen when they have like we get a lot of like George Washingtons for some reason.
But, really?
Yeah, definitely can't make that happen. But
well, Jesus, that one might be a little tough.
First one's Jesus. But
we've definitely had some. Kobe Bryant would be another tough one that we've had a couple times.
You just had to go there, man.
Yeah, it's sad.
Well, you guys are giving us the option. I mean,
it's true.
It's
true. Well, dude, seriously, thank you for taking the time out. And I'm serious about this correspondent thing. But
I'm in. Yeah. Count me in. So,
if I don't have the answer, I will find it for you in a couple weeks.
All right, we'll talk for sure.
Yeah, thanks,
That's
Jeff.
Right. You're gonna be
thanks, fellas. All right.
Bailey's speed dial. I am sorry.
At all 24/7, you will have to be on the show for 5 minutes if we need you.
Sign me up.
All right, Jeff, we appreciate it, man. We'll
take all right, thanks, fellas.
Yeah, have a good night.
Oh man, dude, that'd be kind of cool though. Although I feel really bad for him because I'll probably ask a lot of questions. Be out in the water. Hey, Jeff, what do you think about this?
No, you know what? Jeff, all you have to do is give him a big scientific explanation. He'll never call you again. That's all I have to say. Is if you use big words with Bailey. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah.
You're like what?
So speaking human terms here, I feel like that dude from Good Burger. He's like, I know some of these words. Oh, that was a fun episode. We're definitely gonna have to have him on again to talk about some more topics because, dude, that stuff is a big. I think it's extremely under talked about nowadays. Is conservation in general, 1, but 2, just what we can do to keep preserving our fisheries and really how much importance is in someone's job like Jeff's that goes into what we do on a daily basis. I mean, especially for you, it's your full-time job.
Yeah.
Something like that is so important. So huge shout out to Jeff for joining and getting on with us. And hopefully we'll have him on here soon, talks about some more stuff. But dude, I'm excited for tournament this weekend. I'm really excited.
Are you sure you're excited? I know.
I am really excited.
Everyone's gonna want to take your picture.
No. I'm not like a celebrity. I mean, I have to say I was really appreciative of the support of the NYKBF boys. So I'm really excited to see everybody on Saturday. I have a lot of thank yous to give out because the support they had over the weekend was really cool. Yeah, but I'm really excited to obviously 1, fish tournament Saturday, 2, fish with you guys on Sunday, and 3, edit these next episodes of Chasing Hardware because they're going to be some fuego episodes.
Like almost getting eaten by an alligator.
Almost eaten by an alligator, catching a 6.5 pounder, losing a 7+ pounder, and winning a tournament, accomplishing the goal in the series in the 4th episode that I did not plan for. And well, you guys will just have to see in Chasing Hardware because it's going to be pretty cool. So make sure you guys are subscribed to that new YouTube channel, Be the Fish, and to Andy's new YouTube channel. Both of them are down below if you guys want to check them out. But Andy, I think that's about it for tonight, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to be out all next week. You're going to be on a beach getting tipsy.
It's going to be 91 degrees and sunny every day. I can't wait. Even though I die when it's that hot. Like,
You're going to be
what?
You're going to be a freaking lobster is what you're going to be.
No, I'll probably take my blackfish gear and I'll wear long sleeves the whole time just because as soon as I get back, the day I get back, the next morning I have to get up and have a guide trip. And then that following week is when I start my like hellacious run of like 17 in a row or something like that. So my boat might need to go in like for service by the end of June because I've already put like 20 hours on my motor. So like it's like, whew, yeah, great.
Sounds like new boat time.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, me and the wifey. So definitely, it's in the cards.
Hobie.
Trying to put everything in play with all the moving parts that that we have moving on and going on right now. So it's in the cards. We just have to keep chugging along, get more guide trips, and then make it more plausible for it to happen.
It's gonna be an exciting year for you, buddy.
Every year is an exciting year. Every day is exciting because we get to wake up.
Wow, you just got like T Swift deep, right? Are you okay?
Yeah, dude, I'm good.
Are you high?
No, if I was high and I got drug tested, I would fail and I would lose my license forever. So no, I am not high. I'm just
Did you just admit to being high because you said if you got drug tested, you'd fail?
Yeah, if I was high.
Oh, I was like, did he just admit he's high?
Dude, no, I haven't done that stuff since probably the night before my wedding. So
we're getting the stories out, folks.
Oh gosh, there's endless stories.
That's amazing. We're gonna have to clip that.
Yeah.
What do you want to know about your guide?
This one time at band camp.
Oh God. Oh, Jesus. That's amazing. Dude, speaking of that, we are so due for a not so serious episode.
Oh, I know. We got to be coming up on 300 here soon.
We are. We're on episode 283.
So maybe in 17 we'll have a dangler episode.
Sounds like it's going to be this summer then, right? I mean, it would have to be.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me pull up the calendar here while we.
It's going to be the beginning of July.
Let's see. Okay, if we're going to count
16 divided by 2, 8 weeks.
You're way smarter than me.
Well,
that would have been so much easier. I was about to just count calendar weeks. This is why we have Andy around. It just simplifies things.
Like I said,
4 weeks. So yeah, that'd be.
I can do everything but speak proper English on a social post. So,
yeah, so that's if given we have 2 episodes a week, which we're gonna have a crazy couple months coming up. So
yeah,
there might be some weeks, folks, where we only have 1 episode a week. But that being said, this summer sounds like episode 300 is coming. Yeah. So if you want to get on the Serious Angler podcast for 5-10 minutes, maybe if you're cool, we'll keep you on for an hour. And I'm just kidding. But if you guys want to come on, send us an email, shoot us a DM on social. We're going to start getting that actually planned out because we're going to hopefully have a big, live stream for folks to join, gets all of our sponsors involved, maybe give a bunch of stuff away to you guys. So, let us know. And we'd love to get you guys on the show. But either way, we're looking forward to it. But Andy, I think it's about time we tune out here tonight, buddy.
Yep, I gotta go get my boat ready. So,
all right. Well, you have a good day on the water, and we will talk to you folks. Yeah, we'll talk to you folks next week. I don't have a show planned yet for Tuesday night, but keep tabs on the Serious Angler social, and you guys will see who comes on for the show. We'll probably have Drew or somebody come co-host with me. I think that's what we'll do. But either way, folks, we appreciate you guys. As always, have a good one, and we will see you guys next week.